My name is Naya Nicholson. I should have said that before I said everything. I'm the class of 14 and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm sort of serving as the moderator anchor for this conversation, sharing some questions, but also participating and sharing my own experiences. And yeah, so maybe I'll go quickly and then I'll pass the mic. So I'm born and raised in Harlem here in New York City, and the arts has always been an integral part of my life, showing up in many different ways. And today, showing up professionally, something that I did not know was my pathway at first. I went to LaGuardia High School, came to Vassar. I majored in psychology with correlates in Africana Studies and Education. I was super involved in student organizations, particularly the dance ones that existed. I know there are many more now, which is awesome. I'm glad there's more resources for dance on campus. I was also heavily entrenched within the Poughkeepsie community, doing a lot of work within the specific nonprofits at the Family Partnership Center, doing a lot of work on the Vassar Farm with inquiry-based science work. But today, I'm entrenched within arts administration, working for a young nonprofit that has made a lot of success and has provided a lot of resources to young artists in New York City called Move NYC. And our mission is to cultivate greater diversity and equity within the dance profession and beyond. And I'm happy to be managing director of that organization, to have been part of it since its beginning. And I'm gonna pass the mic to Scott.
Thanks so much. Hi, I'm Scott Mendelson, class of 93. I'm good with male or female pronouns. I was an English major and minored in women's studies. I was the English major who went to all my professors and was like, oh, couldn't you add this play to the syllabus so I could write on that? So I was headed for theater all along the way. Since then, my career has definitely been very much a zigzag, moving right to New York City after graduation and working with small companies, a lot of new work as an actor and as a writer. And then I just kind of hit a wall and took a 10-year break to catch up on some things, do a little therapy, have a bar mitzvah in my 40s, met my husband and got married, and spent those 10 years working in career development, which I did both in a medical school, doing internships for first-year medical students to work on communication skills, and then also with high school students across the city, which was a wildly multicultural experience. Then after 10 years of that, I was like, okay, if I was going to be happy with a job and a pension, I would be by now. And I'm back writing and acting. I just did a workshop in December of a new solo show that I live streamed, self-producing, based on Love Alone, Elegies for Raj, which is a set of AIDS poetry that I read way back at Vassar in Pat Wallace's AIDS and Literature class in 1990. When that was a time when the formal name of the class was Issues of Representation, AIDS and Literature, so that AIDS wouldn't appear on the transcript. There weren't enough letters, so tells you how long ago that was. Yeah, I'm just, so I'm both a working artist, but I also have a lot of different kinds of administrative experience. Michael and I have been talking about juggling the day job and the other job, and that's part of the path, and happy to talk about that as well.
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to pass the mic to Mickey.
Thanks, Mia. Hi, I'm Mickey, class of 94. I'm the director at the Arizona State University Art Museum. I've been there for 3 years, and for that, I've had a long career in the museum field, over 20 years, and I've worked in various organizations across the country, from the Public Art Fund in New York City, Museum of Contemporary Art Santa Barbara, where I was there for 14 years. In any case, I was an art history major at Vassar. I'm originally from Brownsville, Texas, which is a small border town in South Texas. Went to Vassar sight unseen. I just really fell in love with the programs and really wanted to liberal arts education and got one, and really was wonderful, and have been working in the field for a really long time, but it was a little bit of a circuitous route to get there. I had to try other things to really make sure that this was the field I wanted to go into for various reasons. And I think that's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mickey. And Michael?
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm from a small town, Sparta, Georgia, and now I'm in Brooklyn. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I'm also working in finance. So like how Scott was saying, we balance these day jobs back to back. I have a lot of information about that. I graduated 2017 at Vassar, and my pronouns are he, him, his. At Vassar, I was always active, very engaged. I co-founded an organization called Ujima, a Grew Society, with my really good friend, Asia Almond. That was a lot of fun, a lot of work too, but it's also, I miss those moments of community building at Vassar and everything. And now I'm doing music and I enjoy it. So I can talk a lot more about those things too, but I'll keep my intro short.
All righty. And Scott had a great suggestion, instead of waiting till the end, since we're such an intimate group, to go ahead and have the students introduce themselves so that we can also curate our conversation towards your interest. I'll call names just for ease, but if you could just say your name, your class year, and of course your pronouns, and what your major is, your correlates, and your curiosities for today. Not necessarily questions, we'll get to that, but just so that we can frame our discussion a bit more. Sophie, do you mind starting for us? And if you're not comfortable coming off the mic, that's totally fine.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Hi, I'm Sophie. I am the class of 2023. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm an art history major with a possible Italian double major.
Thank you, Sophie. Courtney?
Hi, I'm Courtney, class of 2023, she, her, hers. I'm also an art history major with a minor in British history and British literary history. I'm interested in going into academic research in art history and a possible professorship, as well as museum studies.
Thank you, Courtney. Sophia?
Hi, I'm Sophia. I use they, them. I am a drama major and queer studies correlate. And yes, I'm looking at acting, directing, theater making, art making.
Fabulous. Thank you, Sophia. Pia?
Hi, everyone. I'm Pia. I'm a sophomore. I'm a psychology major and a studio art minor. And I'm interested in VR design, VR therapy, and like 3D design right now. Oh, and I'm curious about freelance.
Well, thank you, Pia. And for anyone that's off video, if you wanted to use audio only just to let us know a little bit about yourself, that's fine. If not, we will move on.
Sure. My name's Zoe. I'm a sophomore. I use she, her, hers. I'm a biology studio art double major, and I'm especially interested in how science and the arts can be combined.
Great. Thank you so much, Zoe. All right, so let's jump in a little bit. Let's get some of the conversation going. What I thought was really wonderful in the introductions for the last panel was sort of setting the lay of the land in terms of the ethos of the conversation, and this came from Scott's introduction actually. And I think it's great just to have that as an anchor, which is to think about how our personal values align with our professional values within all of your curiosities and anything that you do as a person in the world. So hopefully within our conversation, you'll start to see those through lines and how you don't have to sacrifice yourself to be in the industry or to do the things that you do. So to get us started, I would like to first hear from Michael. If you could share a little bit with us about your why. What drew you to the type of work that you do? So of course, share what that is, its appeal, but also what is the role that Vassar has played in influencing the work that you do today and just your upbringing in of itself.
Yeah. So I always say when you talk about the why of being an artist, at least in my case, I always have to start from my childhood. I'm from a small town called Sparta, Georgia. 7,000 people in my town. I have so much pride in my small town and everything. And one thing that we did do, we knew how to do music. Like everyone sang so well. It was just one of those towns where it's like, oh, you think you're a singer? There's always someone better. It's one of those things where I grew up in a church and I was singing all the time. I used to make money by playing piano in the church. So I've always been an entrepreneur in some way, doing music. Because when you play piano or do any skill within music, it is marketable. It really is because people want it, people need it. My mom, she studied in conservatory playing classical piano. My great grandmother, she was lovely. She died when she was 106. She also played classical piano. So I was always around music. Music was always there. I listened to it. I used to play under the piano while they played, like messing with their feet, and then like get away from the piano and everything. And that was a lot of fun. So I was always there. And then as I got to middle school and high school, I started competing. I started being featured in TV shows. Actually, one of the TV shows that I've been on is called Duets. That was a show that was canceled on the ABC. It only lasted like a season or two. I believe like it was not going to last with all the American Idols and The Voice and everything. But I was too young to compete. But that was the first time that I visited New York. And I remember when I visited New York, like it was so much going on. I was like, there's so much art. And plus it was great that my first time visiting New York was for a performance, you know? That's like an artist's dream, you know? So when I went to New York, I was like, I want to be close to New York. And I remember I applied to Vassar and everything. And Vassar was, it gave a great financial aid package. I was able to do it. Like I was always thankful for that. Love Vassar for that. And even when I was on the campus, I always felt like this is my experience. I always say this is mine's. Some people had very different experiences, but mine's was very much so amazing. I loved it. I met so many people. I was able to grow in my leadership. I was able to do music in so many different ways. I was able to be active in the music department and also do all of my other classes and courses, start an organization that's still on campus. Super excited for the Ujima Guru Society. And I was also doing music outside of campus, and I studied JYA at the London School of Economics, performed in London, in different countries and everything like that. So that was a lot of fun. And senior year of Vassar, I went to the Grammys and was able to join the Grammys Recording Academy. So if you have any questions about arts organizations and everything, I could give so much tea about that, you know? And now I'm working in finance and doing singing and songwriting and everything and producing and composing. It's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to pass the mic to Mickey to share with us a little bit about your why of the work that you do and the role that Vassar played in it.
Sure. Well, my parents are educators. My mom was an elementary school principal, and she paints and draws. She has a studio. She lives across the street from me now. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, but she paints and draws. And my dad got his MFA in painting and was a director of fine arts. And my childhood was filled with art books, art studios, going to museums. It was the way that I grew up was very much impacted by that. And of course, I did not want to do what my parents did. So when I went to Vassar, I thought I was going to be in political science, or I didn't, I wanted to sort of travel. I didn't really know. I definitely wanted a liberal arts education. And in my day, we didn't have computers I think we had like a computer lab, but we had processing typewriters. And we did not register for classes online. We actually had a lottery, and you had to have a number, and I had one of the last numbers in the lottery. So a lot of the classes I wanted to take when I was a freshman were closed, except for Art History 101. And I took it, and it was really revelatory. And I just realized then that it was through art history that I could learn. I always called art history the discipline of all disciplines, because I could learn about religion, I could learn about politics, I could learn geography, I could learn science. There was just so much that through the studying of art history, you could really expand. And so I loved it. I was an Italian minor. I thought I was going to study Italian Renaissance, but I took a 20th century art class, and I started learning about Joseph Beuys and just all these really amazing artists. And it was so fascinating that I changed majors or I changed sort of direction at the very end. But you know, I had an internship right after I got out of college, and in San Antonio at a museum of art there. It was a curatorial internship, and I learned a lot. I got to travel for the first time and work with artists, but it was really hard. I was not paid very well, and I had to have a second job. And it was really tough. And I was 20, and I was in a city I didn't know. And so I did a lot of meandering. I worked in finance, I worked in fashion, I was a middle school teacher. I did a few things, but before I really ultimately decided that I wanted to go to grad school and work with artists. And I'm glad I did that, because when I went to grad school, I had a real commitment to what I wanted to do, as opposed to some friends of mine who were in grad school who just went straight from undergrad to grad. They don't really know what they were, you know, like they just were nervous, you know, and I really had a commitment, and I worked a lot during those years as well. And, you know, constantly did internships and spent a lot of my time just really devoted. I think about my career as a calling. It's not a 9-to-5 job. It really is something that inspires me, but I've had to work with an executive coach to think about work-life balance a lot over the last few years as a director, because it is so fulfilling and purposeful. You know, I remember after the elections, not this round, but the last round, you know, going to my staff and saying, like, what we do, we get to put our heads down on our pillows at night, because what we do every single day is we, you know, bring arts to the audience. We center art and artists in the service of public good and justice. And we get, you know, every day we wake up in the service of good. And so it's something that sustains me, but it's really, really hard work. It's definitely not perfect. There's a lot of issues, and we'll talk about that, I guess, when we talk about equity and diversity, and it's really tough. It's a lot of work, but to me, it is the way I see the world is through the lens of art, which to me means the lens of opportunity and creativity and imagination. So yeah, and Vassar had a lot to do with that.
Thank you, Mickey. And I'm going to pass the mic to Scott.
Thanks so much. So I would say that my path to Vassar and from Vassar has largely been by gut and partly by blurts. I chose Vassar based on the picture on the view book. My whole soul said that's where I need to be. I didn't know why. In retrospect, I can go back and say why. It's the women's college that would admit me. It's I'm like a deep feminist in my soul. I came out and immediately came out. I was one of 2 students who attended the first Gay People's Alliance meeting, the GPA, as it was called then. Most other students waited till the second semester or a future year. No, a couple of us were there right from the start. I didn't major in theater is center to my being. And yet I didn't major in theater because there was an old guard of drama professors there at that time. And I was like, that's not where I need to be. I went to the O'Neill Theater Center for JYA in Connecticut as my semester away, which was great because it was like a semester of conservatory while I could do the liberal arts thing. There I found the acting practice, the Michael Chekhov work that has been my home base as an actor for my whole career. I moved to New York also on impulse, like I'm going to New York, which is something I've questioned because New York is expensive, it's crowded, and friends of mine who went to other places, to Chicago, to Minneapolis, to Atlanta has quite a film and TV scene now. Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I grew up, has a tremendous studio. Netflix has studios there. There's a lot to be said for going to a smaller place where you have more opportunities and can build relationships. That's something to weigh for yourself. On the other hand, New York's amazing. You know, I'm on the subway with Edward Albee, you know, like just casually, like it's just part of things here. So when I first moved to New York, I spent a lot of time doing what a friend of mine calls work with submerged artists. There's this term emerging artists, and the submerged artists are the ones who never quite seem to get past emerging. You know, you dream of breaking through and making money or getting visibility. And then there's artists who just work. And so I did a lot of new plays, really rich stuff, started to do summer stock. And then I kind of hit a wall. I was like sort of right on the edge of, okay, time to audition, really get a manager and an agent and get that happening. And I fell apart. There were just some holes in my personal development. So I took time out to get some therapy, have a bar mitzvah, met my husband, and worked for 10 years doing career development for high school students, including for students at LaGuardia High School, where Naya went. But it was a really amazing chance to get to know the city and cultures and industry in a lot of different ways. And after 10 years, I was doing well. I could have kept going and had a pension, and I could go back and get work in the field. And Sundays were horrible. I wasn't doing anything creative. My husband said, you have to quit. So I quit, and it's been about a little over 3 years. I'm back writing and acting, and in December, I produced a solo show based on this play that I read, or this book of poems that I read as an English major in Pat Wallace's AIDS and Literature class. I'm now the age he was when he wrote them. So those impulses of who am I, what do I need to do, what work is coming through me, a lot of it was there then, and it's taken me 30 years to get myself sorted so that I can show up and get it out in the world. That's partly the life of the artist. The other thing I'll say is that I really do believe in vocation and calling and a spiritual approach. And there's your practice, your artistic practice. What do you do no matter what, whether you're being paid for it or not? And that is a thing that you just have to tap into. You can't, no graduate school, no degree is going to give that to you. Graduate school may be a good thing to do, or it may not, but that's separate from all the worldly things that you attach to. And it's really about trusting yourself and then finding the people who get you. I would say that's the thing that taken me a long time, a lot of zigzagging. And now I go with, oh, you get something that I offer, let me work with you. And then that introduces me to someone else. And the next thing you know, I've got people showing up during a pandemic to come into a trapeze studio to produce a poetry play with me. And a community has been built. But it's one person at a time, and it starts with this still voice in me. And Vassar is I consider Vassar sacred ground as a liberal arts college. There's something about the place that both invites you to receive privilege and yet do really interesting, challenging things with it. And if you listen, who you are it can be heard at Vassar in ways that it's hard to hear in other places, in my experience. I'll leave it there.
Yes, I'm gonna respond to that, Scott. Yes, trust the process. Trust the process. Trust in yourself. I'm gonna start from there. Yeah. I shared, a bit about, arts. Well, actually, I don't know if I shared this yet. Uh, the arts has been an integral part of my life since I was a young girl, all the way through to high school at LaGuardia. And it was then, I mean, also in school, I love the intellectual curiosity. So I definitely wanted to be in a space when it came to college that nurtured all of those things that were part of me, honored the conversations and the people that I wanted to be around. And I'm not sure if this resource is still available, but at the time there was some sort of program where students from New York City who were in high school would have a weekend at Vassar and be partnered with someone who was a freshman or a sophomore, and they would literally just take you around and you would just be a part of their day. My person was Raymond, and his last name is still escaping me. But he was wonderful. Love you, Raymond. And, I had a lot of options in terms of colleges that I wanted to go to, and that weekend cemented it for me. Whether it was spending time at the Alana Center and hearing about the real issues that were happening on campus, but the conversations and the solutions that they were trying to, work towards. It wasn't stagnant. I was like, okay, I know what I'm getting myself into here. To seeing my first dance class with Steve Rooks, and I was like, yes, I get to continue my dance studies. And he's fierce. Actually, does Steve still? I'll look to see if he's still teaching there. Yeah, to just, seeing my first rugby game and really just interacting with people and the questions and feeling welcomed just as a high school student. I said, okay, this is the place for me. It's not too far from home. And that was, like Michael said, of course, everyone has their own unique experience within Vassar. For me, it definitely wasn't all, sunshine. But I will say that 85% of it, 90% of it was being able to take advantage of resources that traditionally aren't available to, the BIPOC community or someone who comes from Harlem like me, to be able to have internships across the state, to be able to study abroad in Australia for a semester, to also having a research study in Cuba in my senior year. There was so many things, as well as knowing that I'm a multifaceted person. The thing about my upbringing, I'm grateful to my parents, and I'm also grateful to Vassar's, dream and you can do it. But it comes to a point in your senior year where you're like, okay, how am I going to do all these things? How am I going to pursue a degree in forensic psychology and, do Stanford Law? But at the same time, I'm really, I'm passionate about teaching kids, but I also want to influence educational policy. And so there were so many things. Beloved Lawrence Mamiya, I was doing a lot of the prison education Vassar initiatives with him. And that just really got me knee deep into justice work, which I think has always been entrenched in my upbringing all the time, especially being from Harlem. The first instances that I learned about different, things with privilege was at LaGuardia and, in navigating that space. So Vassar just seemed like a larger bubble of that for me, but, finding myself within that. But in 2013, when the first formal, awakening of the Black Lives Matter movement was going on with Trayvon Martin, there was a lot of unrest in the Poughkeepsie community. There was a lot of unrest just like in general. And I say Poughkeepsie community because at that time I was in school, of course. And the way that I could, fight back and make our voices heard were to, be, outside and nearby, spaces and with people in the community. So when the verdict did not, favor justice, I was really taken aback by that, and I had to take some time off. And that's when the trip to Cuba happened. Coming back, one, Cuba is just such a beautiful place. The learning about the revolution and the role that the arts played in it, that was my specific focus while I was there, really informed me, and just the role of how the arts has always been participatory and even proactive in addressing the injustices and equities that happen in our society. So there was something about the heartache that I felt about the profession that I wanted to enter. Something about wanting to nurture the well of skills and just passion that was forming within me to do justice work, while also wanting to be able to make sure my mental health was going to be okay at the end of it. The through line was always the arts. On campus, I was involved in, any dance org that was possible with that, any choreography with musicals that was happening on campus, and as well as providing arts exposure, technique-based classes to students in the Poughkeepsie community. I said, maybe I can defer law school. And let me jump in, let me feel the fear and do it anyway. Let me trust the process of what's being revealed to me. And that's always been my love of the arts. So I started from scratch, went right into internship land. But the thing that I will say that's really great about Vassar is that you already have a leg up, because people think in such a narrow way in the world. Like, I don't mean to generalize people, but in my experience at different nonprofits in New York City, let me be specific. People are very, tunnel vision, very siloed about their understanding of intersectionality, of just intersections in general, and thinking big. So I sort of only had a 6-month internship, and a year later was promoted to being manager at, a premier venue in New York City, within a position as a fundraiser, which is traditionally a barrier for Black women, for Black people in general in the arts nonprofit sector, because there's this understanding that you may not understand wealth, you don't know how to acquire it or to manage it. And I'm here to shatter that and to bring other people up with me. I do that in my day-to-day work. And and from there, I met 2 incredible human beings, Nigel Campbell, Chanel Da Silva, who in 2013 created the mission for the organization I work for now, Move NYC, which again is to cultivate greater diversity and equity within the dance profession and beyond. And before they began, they were like, we're artists and we have this vision, but we don't know anything about the business side, or like how to make sure we can provide, just at base, they came out the gate saying everything we're going to offer young people in New York City is going to be tuition free. It's like, okay, great, yes. And yes, but how do we pay ourselves? How do we pay for the studios? How do we pay for the faculty? All of those things come into play. So it was beautiful that we found each other, that I've been there from the beginning, and to know, and especially in this time, that everything that we've done and we'll get there has been steeped in equity. So those, my personal values and my professional values are just smack dab aligned, and that's how I can get up every day and continue to be a light for myself and others even during this time. Moving on, because time is moving. Let's see. Maybe this will be a good time for us to jump into a conversation about how we are faring during this COVID-19 pandemic. And I want to thank all of you in the room with us today, current students, because this is a time like no other, as we all know. But I don't know if I can speak for all of the mentors, but I can definitely speak for myself that I don't know how you're doing it, being in college during this time with so much uncertainty. And I just want to spread a lot of warm energy to you. Keep going, trust within yourself, remain curious. I know this is a very, very hard time, and I thank you for even being here with us today. So, Scott, you want to start? You want to jump in there?
Yeah, let me jump in there. So COVID's been really fascinating for me. Personally, I've been very fortunate in that both my husband and I, our jobs have gone remote. He works for the public schools, and he's like front and center with difficult decisions and how do we serve kids aged 3 through 8. And I get to be a fly on the wall and eavesdrop as we share an office. We've also gotten more time together than ever since we're both workaholics. That's a real gift. The really interesting thing for me is in January, I had started work on this piece of AIDS poetry. And then in March, I had scheduled an open rehearsal to start inviting support and begin to get it on the map to figure out how to get it on its legs or do fundraising and such. And the day after I sent the invitation, my studio said, oh, we're closing, you're not having it here. So that threw a kink in the works. But the piece is ultimately, it's going to be 80 minutes of verse, which because of the shutdown and I don't have to commute and things are quieter, I actually have been, I actually got half of it memorized and built. And then the piece itself, so it's about the pandemic of the 80s, AIDS, and there's these lines that jump out that are resonant, like there's a point where he's worried about his husband going back to work and getting in an elevator with some coughing CPA. He says, the whole world ought to be masked. There's another point where he's saying, he's like, I need to get something to remember my husband by, but who has time to shop in this murderous round of going no place? So he's experiencing this grief, and it's echoing with what we're going on now. So all of a sudden, this thing that I started in January that felt like a history piece is resonating in really current ways. And then I said, I am December 1st, World AIDS Day. I'm doing a version of this somehow. So as I was moving toward it, I found a director who was available and looking for work. She didn't ask about money. She just needed an interesting project because all her teaching has dried up. I had a wonderful cinematographer, videographer who does all kinds of work with Elizabeth Streb, trapeze and extreme action dance. And I ended up performing in a trapeze academy that I could afford because they have no income. And did a live stream with 127 people logging in to see this piece. All because there was space. Things are shut down, and it's terrible, and a lot of people are out of work. Fortunately, I had some money so I could offer little stipends to people who were showing up to help me with my project. But the treadmill, the like, oh, I gotta keep up with someone or I gotta compete, all that's shut down. And so there's space to hear yourself think, to hear what's needed, and sort of cut through some of the craziness. I also think, we'll get to this later, I think that's a big part of why Black Lives Matter has taken off, is because all the distractions or all the lies of material things we have to pay attention to have been shut down. And so we've got space to say, oh, what's really going on? Am I really hungry? Do I really want that thing, or do I need something else? So there's a thinness right now. It's easy to contact people. They have more time in their lives than they're used to. So it's kind of an exciting time to be venturing out and finding new possibilities. Even though there's a lot of things that are broken and shut down, it's sort of a clearing. There's a chance to start fresh things. So that's what I'll offer.
Thank you, Scott. Mickey, would you mind sharing with us about what's going on with COVID and how you're faring?
Yeah, COVID has been incredibly difficult on my sector, my team, my job. We had to shut down our museum temporarily. We went on hiatus in March and then came back when our students came back in around August. And it was, it's been really difficult. Obviously, we did not know when we were going to be back. So it's not like we could do long-term strategy. But we pivoted really quickly. We started a program called Pilot Projects to just be super responsive to the moment at hand. When we've been doing a lot of different like film, outdoor public projects, outdoor installations, outdoor video series, and things that people can feel like they can still be safe. We're open now Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, just a few days a week. And, we've lost a significant audience. Then that's the audience that was our campus audience. And so that's been really, really hard. And as a director, I had to make some tough choices that enabled me to keep my entire team. I think we had one layoff, but it really wasn't even COVID related. And, just really made some hard choices around programming, taking from endowments and things like that are really going to be problematic in the long run. But we also used it as an opportunity to really kind of think about what museums are not doing. And, museums are very place-based. There are these sort of temples that one has to travel to. And this gave us an opportunity to jump into the 21st century and really explore our digital offerings. And one of the things that we realized right away is that what museums' limitations are is that we are very object-centered and very much focused on the finished product when we present works to our audiences. And for curators, for myself at least, one of the highlights and the best part of my job is to be in the artist's studio and understand what the creative process is like, and look at their studio and see what are they reading, what are they drinking, who, you know, what books are in their studio, what clippings are around, what are they listening to, how are the works that they're producing a manifestation of their entire lived experience. That's what's really fascinating, and that's what we don't show in museums at all. So we started creating Spotify playlists, and, you know, what are the artists listening to in the studio that we could distribute. And we started a program called Couch Coffee Culture, doing one tomorrow with the artist Leo Villarreal. And we're going into the artist studio and asking them, you know, what's your home life like? What is the light coming in? You know, some artists live in the woods, some artists live in Brooklyn, some artists live, we've had some in Mexico City, and also we've then been able to get audiences from all around the world. One of our Couch Coffee Cultures, we had people from France and Kyrgyzstan and Mexico City and Tempe, Arizona. And so it was a really incredible conversation that was really centered around the artist and the artist's creative process, which we're taking those lessons and thinking about how we can continue to apply them into the museum as we go forward. And it's what's really hard is that so much of my, I've been at ASU Art Museum for 3 years, and the first year and a half, I was really plugging this idea of like, not just being this like passive viewer and you walk in and like everything is just like, you just receive everything. And how could we co-create? How could we leverage the expertise of you all when you walk into the museum? How do we bring out your stories and your opinions? And we had all of these interactive displays and interactive workshops and stations, and COVID, it's like we literally have to be a sterile space. Like we really were fighting that a lot in like the museum world. Like we wanted to sort of play it up, and now we're like, oh, nope, it has to be sterile, don't touch anything. So it's also presented certain challenges around how someone occupies and feels like they own and are a part of a museum when you can't touch anything. So yeah, lots of changes, very stressful fundraising right now. It's really, really a lot of our, renewals, membership renewals, things like that aren't renewing, and people are also, I don't know about you all, but I am really overwhelmed being on Zoom constantly. I have meetings all day, every day, and they're all on Zoom. And for me, as an extrovert and someone who really, really needs to be around people, this has been incredibly difficult. Just trying to have, staff retreats in Zoom, and studio visits in Zoom, and fundraising in Zoom. It's presented a lot of challenges. I cannot wait to get to a point where we're all, where I can be together with people again. But I'm also in Arizona. Nobody cares. There's no rules here. So it's not like the grocery stores are open, the gyms are open, everything's open here. Unfortunately, we turned blue, but it's still Arizona. So I moved here from California, and Californians call it Scary Zona. So here we are.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Mickey. I'm going to jump in before I let you share, Michael, as a lot of this absolutely resonates with the dance sector for sure, where a lot of dance companies and organizations have been hit really hard by the pandemic. As you can imagine, dance artists have to be in the studio to rehearse with one another, to train and to learn. Then there's the expectation that you're on stage and you're able to share that with a lot of people. So the Broadway, world has been impacted, deeply by this because, there are with nonprofit models in terms of earned income, you know, you're not having your daily classes where, you know, you're getting revenue, you're not having those performances. People aren't really, you know, signing up for, you know, courses online because they have that fatigue. Like I know many of us probably can resonate with. So it's been really difficult. And the organizations that are finding ways to be innovative, and which is difficult. It's difficult when you're thinking about, you know, do I have to lay people off? Do I have to furlough someone? Is my organization going to make it? Is the philanthropic industry, the funders and individual donors, are they going to show up for us? While also trying to keep the integrity of your programs is quite difficult. And as I shared, Move NYC is in an early stage, so there's always some space, especially with the slowdown that Scott was talking about, to take a step back and say, okay, what works within our capacity? What can we offer that is beneficial to our young artists and to the community that supports us? Like what are public facing activities? And, you know, how can we really make a case to funders that, you know, as a young organization compared to, you know, Ailey, for instance, that's been around for 60 plus years, you know, how do you make that case? It's a small pool. Everyone's fighting for the same resources. It's New York City, lots of nonprofits and organizations to pluck from. So, oops, sorry, I'm just getting a note. Oh, okay. Yes, so that's just been difficult in of itself. But I'm lucky and happy to say, fortunately, that Move NYC is thriving, and what we're doing and the support that we're given, even being that we just received our nonprofit status a month before the pandemic, which was great. And then we got into the pandemic, we're like, oh my gosh, okay, we're in overdrive. This is scary. So in terms, you know, there's the balance between, you know, living in the uncertainty and then innovating and trying to thrive. So everyone's grappling with that. What I didn't share before in the previous panel is exactly what Mickey was talking about, just how hard fundraising is right now. So one skill set that was developed indirectly being at Vassar is our the way that we think, and also our capability to write. Do not take that for granted. A lot of people do not know how to write. So the grants, y'all, that is a specific skill. And if you're interested in development, and the thing that's great about arts administration as well is that you're creative too. You're also innovating. You're helping to make the artistry come to life. If you have your pulse on it, if you're passionate about it, learning about an organization whose mission resonates with you, or, you know, aligns with your personal values, will go a long way. Writing about them and helping them secure funding will just be a piece of cake. So outside of having meetings with people, of course, and making your pitch, there's a lot of proposals, you know, 3 to 5 pages that you have to write, and people struggle with that. So during this time, I have been getting a lot of requests. Informally, I have a freelance development consulting practice where I'll help people create their development plans of how they'll secure their contributed resources, as well as helping them with grant writing. And those requests have come in an overwhelming way, showing me that there's a great need in the field for this kind of service. So yes, fundraising has been quite difficult for some entities, especially individual artists. And I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic to Michael, who can speak a little bit more about this as well.
Yeah, so being a performing artist, there's no time in history, or at least in my life, where it's been easy. You know, I just need to start with that first. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, I've seen myself, you know, kind of hit a rut in my artistic practice, and also find some successes. But also my friends who were hit hard, you know, who are also performing artists. I didn't share this with the last group, but because like anytime when I share it, it really hurts. Like I get a little emotional, so I try not to get emotional, you know. So I'll just have a joke here and there. But before the COVID-19 pandemic, I had a casting agent who reached out to me for a Broadway production that that was new. It had a lot of backing, a lot of money, a lot of these things and everything. And like, it was a very promising opportunity. And I did the audition and everything. I remember I was working on my fitness. I changed my diet. Anytime my friends would ask me like, oh, you want to drink? You want to go? I'm like, no, I cannot drink alcohol. Because with me, I'm like that artist where it's like, if I have to do a music video, a performance or anything like that, I really detox and get my body right, like all of these things. And this was like one of those opportunities where it's like, it was required, like it would have to be required for me. But when COVID hit, that opportunity went out the window. And this was an opportunity that would have paid more than my finance job. So I could have quit my finance job. I would have been I could have went all in on my arts, because this show was going to be big. I can't say which show, but it was going to be a big show, and it would have been so much exposure, so much amazing things. And then I look back, I was like, this casting agent found me because of the work that I had already done. And usually the work that I already had done was like, or completed, was at home. You know, it was me like on Instagram playing with my guitar on a piano, and like those videos would go viral sometimes. And like, I think they saw one of those videos, and like, I was like, this is an opportunity for artists. There was some optimism. I was able to work with so many artists during this pandemic. I worked on a composition project for a 9/11 memorial dance video. That was a lot of fun. Like, I have another composition project where they have a budget. So you get paid to do this work while you're at home. You have all these opportunities to do new projects, work virtually with each other as artists, because we are really pulling together as artists during this time, like literally sending each other money so that someone can like buy food. Because you're in a different position. Like, it's like all these things, like checking in on each other. Are you good? How's your mental health? Like, I see a lot of optimism and also innovation that's going to come from this COVID-19 pandemic. It's sad, it's tragic, of course, but a lot of innovation is going to come about. And like, when you get these opportunities, like as a performing artist, you get so many no's. At the end of the day, like these crises, you get kind of used to it. You're like, okay, I know that would have been great, but I need to look forward and like be happy with what I got and be thankful with what I got. So I really encourage people in any artistic practice, get skills that you don't have to go all in for, pretty much. So let's say if I was all in into singing, that would have been my only thing that I would be reliant upon, you know. And some people, they do well in that type of arrangement, but in my case, I wanted to learn about composing. I wanted to learn about producing. I want to learn about all these things that happen in the background, songwriting. Like, these are all things that I can do and be hired for contract work at home, doing any crisis pretty much. So it's like I've really leaned into that side, that aspect of my artistic practice, to keep myself sane and also not forego my skill set, because people do need you. People need artists. So I hope I gave a mixture of like some realness and some optimism, you know, but we're gonna be all right. We're gonna be okay. And I'm optimistic. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. At this time, before we continue our conversation, one of our mentors, Mickey, will have to leave us. She has another engagement, so I just wanted her to have a moment to have her closing statements and how you can get in touch with her.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to be on the connection tomorrow. I think those are times for one-on-one, so I'll be seeing everybody. I'm sorry, I just have a couple of things I'm juggling today. I'm available always. One of the things I love about my job is that I get to work at a university art museum, and so I'm constantly in contact with students and think about how much they share with me and how important intergenerational dialogue is, particularly around Black Lives Matter and equity issues. It's really been so important for me to learn from this next generation of thinkers who are really helping set and dismantle a lot of systems that my generation and generations before me put in place and then perpetuated. So I'm really, really excited to be working with you. I loved my time at Vassar. It completely shaped me. I think that the way that I think about, just being a critical thinker, and way I can think about experimentation, and am encouraged constantly to rethink and unlearn a lot. A lot of that came from my time at Vassar. So I'm really excited to meet you all, and I will be back. And I'm so sorry I have to jump off early. It was so nice to see you mentors again, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, Patricia. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mickey.
Bye, Mickey.
Yes, so I'm happy that Mickey even started to talk about some of the Black Lives Matter equity things, and I'll jump in. Yes, yes. I should have clarified with the last group my sarcasm when I say the Great Awakening, because it's always been present. We've all known about it, but like Scott said, because we're slowed down and all the extra noise has gone away, our mechanisms for connecting with one another had it at the forefront, and we're forced to reckon with it. We're forced to make changes, or we're asked to make these changes, but we need to. And within the dance nonprofit sector, arts and culture specifically, there have been some real attempts at change and some veiled ones. Whether those are the Black Lives Matter statements that went up all spring, but there are no changes within the institutions themselves and how they operate, and how they make space for the people that they say they want to be in the room. The increased call for BIPOC identifying folks in the space, as well as just looking at practices. That one thing that has always been an inequity is artist pay within certain nonprofits. So now is the time that a lot of artists out, just outside of Black Lives Matter, just all of the equity issues that are coming to play, people are putting their foot to the pedal, and they're saying, what are you going to do? How are you really supporting artists? Really getting out of this sort of nonprofit industrial complex where the spaces think they're producing the art and giving you the visibility and opportunity, but for artists to really take a step within that and say, we have a voice, and we should also have a part in how things are panning out structurally and functionally. So it's been great to see the artists in that way feeling empowered, and to see that there are a number of dance nonprofits who are rising to the occasion to do the work that they need to do. For newer organizations like mine, we have had just the honor to start with that as a base, pulling from what we've seen as an inaccessible, as a barrier that has existed already in dance education, and start to already take away those layers, so that we can continue to add to the narrative, so we can continue to add to what we're seeing. That's what's beautiful about art, is that it's the experiences that you have within yourself that you're sharing with others. If we're consistently locking people out of it, we're going to start to see the same stories, and that's not reflective of our world, not in the people who are part of it. So I'll say that for right now. And Scott and Michael, feel free to jump in with what you're seeing and how you're experiencing it.
Yeah, no, I kind of commented like in the first session. I was like, back at Vassar, like we were always aware Black Lives Matter was, it was part of the vernacular when you talk to each other in lunch, like all identities, all, like, I don't care if you white, Black, Chinese, anything, like people, like we had this awareness that was on campus, and I was appreciative of that. Like, it's like it made it a bit easier for me to go to school. I mean, of course, some people probably didn't, because it is still Vassar, but like for the most part, it was just part of the culture. I remember there was a hate crime incident in the library. This is a painful memory that I think Vassar is still grappling with. At least our class did, and we protested. I remember everybody protested on the campus, and the school was supportive of that protest, and like all of these ideas like we've been dealing with it for a long time. And it just feels weird to me that there is this awakening. And I know people who've been working in the movement for a long time always say, yeah, you always have these awakenings. Like, it's just what it is. Like, this is why we do the work. Like, this is also why, like, I know it's frustrating. Sometimes it can feel like, then what's the point? What's the point of these awakenings? What's next? What are the solutions? So I know in my corporate environment, I've just always been super skeptical of corporations. I'm skeptical of arts organizations. I'm skeptical of nonprofits. Like, I'm skeptical of everybody when it comes down to my Black people, because in the South, I'm from Georgia. I'm very, and like, even if you're not from Georgia, you can feel the inequities as a Black person, especially if you're a Black LGBTQIA plus, all these intersections, if you're a woman, all these things come together. And I think within our artistic practice, I have the responsibility to weave that into my work. And I completed a project during COVID, and COVID with me working from home allowed me to complete the project, and these ideas is what I grappled with, and I use, and most of the knowledge and vernacular that I learned, it was from Vassar, from those classes, my poli-sci class with Luke Harris, who talked about our crisis, our constitutional crisis, and our court crisis in some way when it comes down to how can we truly obtain justice. So it's just all these ideas, it's been here, and we got a long time until we truly see some change in some way. But I'm great. I'm happy about the awakening, but best believe I'm skeptical, and I'm holding people accountable through my art and through all the additional work that I'm going to do. And I hope y'all do the same through your artistic practice. That's all I got to say.
I just want to say, the thing about systemic injustice is that it's big and it takes up all the air, and we're in contact with it all the time from whatever position we're in. And we both have to take care of ourselves and do what we can to move the ball, to be on the right side of history. And so one thing to be aware of is that wherever we are, whether we're a student in a college, or, during my break from performing, I was a manager in an office in the New York City Department of Education, overseeing a 60-year-old Black woman, a 50-year-old Black woman, and a 50-year-old white woman. And I was this young gay white guy brought in to reform. And here's this woman who's in her 60s who was hired by the Dewey as one of the first Black women to take on a professional position in the 70s. You can only, we talk about microaggressions. I can only imagine what she lived through. And she held things together and was using paper tape calculator and making things work. And we wanted to I was brought in to computerize and move things forward and serve more students, and leaving her in the dust. She wasn't equipped because of a mix of her history and her personality. She was, if you wanted a central casting of the angry Black woman, she leaned into it. And I just stuck in this structure. I was administration, she was union. I'm young and white and male. She's, an older Black woman in this position. She missed promotions. I tried, it was tough. And to some extent, I could just say, all I can do is see and empathize. My hands were tied, but I could at least be present. But when I was a college student, I was dealing with my own stuff, and it was easier to shout and say, I'm going to change the world, than sit and be with myself and the impact of anti-feminist and anti-queer stuff on me. The thing is that we're connected to the bigger truths. And I think particularly as artists and people connecting to art, we're looking past the details, the bureaucracy, the system that stymies us, to be part of that bigger stream, that arc of justice. and to trust that you can take care of yourself and be of use on moving us along that arc wherever you are. You are in the right place. There is help for you if you need it, and you have help to offer even when you're feeling trapped. That we don't have to, I guess the other thing, when I hear about microaggressions and I know the impact that being in a culture that does all those little things can cause, but if we put our energy into trying to control the people to stop the microaggressions, then we're abandoning our own power and connectedness to the things that move us past that culture. So it's about trusting yourself, connecting with people, being present. And whether we go into the arts or go into some other field, the arts are where we learn to be present and to be awake and to receive and see the optimism and truth that's around us, even when everything's conspiring to keep it from us. So I don't know. That's what I have to offer.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Michael. So we're at the point now where we have shared, we delved into a couple of different topics, and we want to hear from you. So if you have general questions for us, you can either put them in the chat, you can raise your hand. We have that capability, as Patricia shared earlier. You can take yourself off mute for larger group questions, but we definitely will have time for breakout sessions if we have individual ones. So based off of the temperature of where we are, we can jump into another one sooner or later. So let us know. Take a moment.
Hi. Hi. I was wondering if you guys had any advice for sort of looking for internships and like sort of starting your job search generally.
I know at least in music, I don't know what type of internship you're looking for, but I guess I can talk about music and finance. So in music, I've heard really great success stories with people who find like a music studio to shadow, like an engineer or someone who they aspire to work with in some way. In music, in the arts too, I think it's a problem that a lot of internships, they don't pay. And I think that needs to change. I never had an arts internship. I'm going to be honest, because I just couldn't afford it. Like, in order for you to have an arts internship, most of the times you got to afford it. And it's like most people, they find ways to afford it, or they probably can tap into other resources. Like, let's say, I think Vassar, they have like grants or like money that students can actually use so that they can take on some of these opportunities. But I've heard of great opportunities in the arts where, people can link up with other artists to help them out. And obviously no one want to pay anyone, but if you offer to volunteer or help, people would love you. And that's just what it is. And in finance, I was recruited sophomore year for finance, pretty much. They start recruitment very early. And sometimes you can find really great programs. Like my firm have like a Women on the Move program, or like Early Advantage. I did Early Advantage, which was pretty much geared towards people with different majors. They have a Black Pathway program now. It's just different types of programs that they do have, and people are trying to get more diversity into the workplace. So that's a good thing. But good thing in corporations, the internships pay. So if people wonder how I ended up in finance, that's pretty much the reason why. It paid well, and I was able to do my art and get off of work early if I needed to, after I got the internship, of course. Yeah. Cool.
I would offer a couple thoughts. I was terrible about looking for internships or planning ahead in that way. I would get so involved in my cause or my project or my thing that I wasn't looking out. It took me a long time to really prioritize that. But what I will say is that if you're curious and interested in something for yourself, and if you take an interest in the other person, people want to talk to you. They want you around. So start with something like, oh, I want to do that. That sounds interesting. Oh, that person is doing something. I'd like to be like them in some way. You know, look for the person. It almost doesn't matter the field. Look for the person, or look to the field you're curious about it, and then just throw it out there. And people will show up if you're genuinely curious and not demanding for, well, I need this because I have to do this. No, be curious, because the opportunities are there and they'll meet you halfway. The other thing I would offer is that, to Michael's question about internships that pay or don't pay, you have to take care of yourself, your bottom line. The starving artist works for very few people. You need to start with, what do I need to take care of myself? What kind of job do I need? But even with around that, you can, there's a wonderful book for career transitioners, but I think it's an amazing way to start your career, called Working Transitions. And she talks about possible selves. There's lots of things you could do and be. And she talks about crafting experiments. Oh, let me try a little volunteer thing. Let me take a class that will teach me something about that. And as you go, you meet people, you see what fits and what doesn't, and you meet the people and where there's need, so that your interests align with where there's opportunity. But you do it in manageable chunks. You don't go all in one thing. Some people do that and you're clear and you're driven by something deeper. But if you're not sure, then just try little things. And you know what? The right people, somebody will say, oh, you're good at, I ended up at a medical school because I had a job as an administrator in a college, and somebody noticed me and said, oh, you're competent. I need you. And that turned into internships, and that turned into my administrative career, just because somebody saw me. So follow your interest, be curious, and be ready to be surprised. The opportunities are there. If you open the door, and be prepared to fail, you'll trip, you'll make mistakes. That's okay. You got time, trust me.
Yes, I echo everything that Michael and Scott just offered. And also remember, what's been really helpful for me, especially starting out, whether I was an intern or an assistant, is making sure that in the same way that you're investing in the space, that investment is in return for you. And if it's not serving you, you don't have to be there. You don't have to sacrifice parts of yourself. You should, as Scott said in a previous session, go all in with whatever the volunteer opportunity is, or the internship opportunity is, or your entry-level job, because you want to be able to have the full experience and to know for yourself, is this what I want to continue doing, or do I need to pivot? Or can I handle this and also add to my plate and fulfill another curiosity? So that's what I would say. That's what I would add. Do we have any other general questions?
And one other thought I want to add on top of that. In your career, to get to the next level, to get a job, you always have to volunteer in some way to do it first. You have to go to school. You have to take an interest and just be doing it. Very few people get promoted. There's no expectation of advancement. So be brave, take risks, take an interest. Like every job I've done, I said, oh, let me just try this. And then somebody said, let me pay you to do that. The expectation that somebody's just going to give you a raise or give you the opportunity, it's just not quite how it works. Maybe somebody else has a great mentor or had an experience where you were treated as a protege and brought forward. But even then, I think there's this sort of inner movement before the world comes to meet you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Scott. If you don't have any more general questions,